back to Tread Talk from Treadmill TV. This episode is available on YouTube as a video, and you can also catch us as a podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and iHeart Radio. On this episode, we get to talk to Deena Kastor. She's an American athlete, author, and coach. She has shared her acquired wisdom all along her journey and is sharing an hour for this podcast. Let's get to know Deena Kastor. First thing, everybody knows you as a marathoner. So we should go through your bio, and I'll make sure that it's accurate. So you're Deena Kastor of the 2004 Athens Olympic Marathon Bronze. You're a 2005 Chicago Marathon winner, 2006 London Marathon winner, and you hold American records for the women's marathon, the women's masters full marathon and half marathon. I learned that recently. You are an 8-time All-American Razorback. And you're also nationally ranked in high school. And more recently, you've become a New York Times bestselling author, including winning the award for 2019 Best Memoir of the Year. And you were almost baked on a professional level. Is that right?
Yes.
That's a line we can borrow from Michael Scott, that we're pretty sure you baked on a professional level.
Yeah.
You're a constant source of inspiration for a lot of people, and sometimes a cautionary tale, and I'll explain that later. To get things started, though, we're going to do some quick feats. So I have 15 of the internet's top most asked questions, and questions that I've been asked as a runner. Wow. So quick feat, meaning I want you to answer these just as quick as possible. One word, one sentence.
The hardest thing for me, because I'm so long-winded and answering questions that, like, bullet questions, I always want to explain myself. But I'm going to try.
The first one should be really easy. So what shoes should I buy?
A60S trainer.
Okay. Why does my leg hurt right here? Because that gets asked all the time on Facebook running forums. Why does my leg hurt right here?
Right here. Probably because you're ignoring it.
Okay. Good question, or good answer. Which watch should I get?
Just a Timex chronograph, an old school.
I like that answer. How do I make myself poop?
I would say chugging a full glass of water right when you wake up in the morning.
Where are you running this weekend?
Ooh, Mono Lake.
Mona? Is that the same as Mono?
Yeah.
I've always been saying it wrong. It's not Mono Lake?
Yeah, it's Mono Lake, but
okay.
We'll accept either.
That's how the Ohioans say it when they visit. How do I get faster?
Run faster. Do strides.
Best running movie?
Running Brave.
True or false, Strava or it didn't happen?
It didn't happen. True or false? True or false? Am I supposed to say true or false?
Yeah, true or false.
Okay.
So Strava or it didn't happen? Is that true?
I think that's totally false.
How do you carry your phone on a run?
In my hand.
Have you ever done a 5K?
I do actually carry my phone sometimes.
Have you ever done a 5K marathon?
Nope. Can't say I have.
Doesn't running hurt your knees?
Never.
Never. Best running book?
Oh, man. Ooh. I mean, the one that I just recently picked up was Women in Running by Amby Burfoot, and I really enjoyed it. But the one that's had the most influence on my running was The Art of Learning, and Josh Waitzkin is a chess player.
A chess player wrote the best running book?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We can get into that more later. What do you eat right before a race?
Bagel with butter and a scrambled egg.
Why can't you just sprint the whole time? My dad asked me this all the time in high school. Why don't you just sprint the whole race?
Oh, you can. See what happens.
Okay. Since you run so much, you just eat anything you want, right?
Yes.
Okay. Those are the quick feet questions for Deena.
Good thing eating the things that I want happen to be extraordinarily high quality and healthy. And even if it's not healthy, it's still high quality, like a really great baked good or cinnamon rolls for breakfast with a strong cup of coffee, but they can't just be like popped out of a cylinder. They have to be like nurtured and loved and then risen and put in the oven.
Not the ones that blow up if you leave them on the counter for too long. Okay.
Yes.
Speaking of coffee, I did bring my coffee. Got my Treadmill TV mug. So cheers. So,
I would say it's a little late to be drinking coffee for me.
Really?
But last night I was up 8 different times taking my dog outside, who got into something. I'm not sure what yet. I'm sure it will reveal itself soon.
Yeah.
But up all night, so this is definitely a coffee all day kind of day.
I think I get, from my dad's side of the family, I drink coffee like 3 times a day. So when I wake up, a little after lunch, and then mid-afternoon. So this is normal for me. So you are the author of Let Your Mind Run, a memoir of thinking my way to victory. And have you ever read the book Walking Across America?
You know, I actually have it in my bookcase, and I have not read it yet.
That was one of the books that I just pulled off of a shelf randomly because I liked the title. And it really reminded me of your book because I read that when I was in high school, loved it. And the spoiler alert is that he didn't walk all the way across until the second book came out. So
you have to buy book 2?
Exactly. And the second one, he's married. The first one is just him and his dog, which is like a novel, but it was a true story. It was an adventure, and that's what your story is like. It's an adventure. It's a true story. It's an adventure, and you just wove in all along the way the Let Your Mind Run theme because it was a part of that journey. So it also took you 3 years to write, I found out.
Yeah.
I thought you were the fast one.
Oh, no. It was, and it's why I've only written one book, because I pretty much remember everything, and the pain of writing that has not worn off. I was resisting writing it from my friends and agent and because I didn't feel like I had a story that had struggle and despair and that I felt like you need to work yourself out of. And then as I got into writing a lot, I thought, you know what? Maybe I was totally spoiled and supported and came from a wonderful family, but my head was my biggest hurdle and challenge. And I think so many of us can relate to that. And even people that think they're upbeat, if they really stop and pay attention and realize maybe the tone of their thoughts are off, that we can really be better drivers of our story than just being the victims of negative thinking. So I wanted to tell the story without force feeding optimism and you have to think this way and you should do this. I wanted to tell the story in an authentic way. And I think it was just really hard to find the right voice for that it didn't seem dismissive, but it also wasn't nagging and force feeding people to grow themselves. You could read it and not take any lessons from it, or you can read it and really apply what I did to my running to your own life.
Well, kind of what I thought before I read it was that it was going to be more of a self-help book, but it was more of a memoir with good advice along the way. So there are three or four episodes that I wanted to talk about. One where being positive was easy. 2, when being positive was the obvious choice. 1, when being positive was difficult. And then a 4th one, when being positive was easy, followed very quickly by second guessing. So those are the 4 episodes that I wanted to talk about from the book. The book was dedicated to Coach. Was that to all coaches, or is that V Hill?
It was V Hill,
okay.
Who I just call Coach, but who's very good friends with Jack Hazens. They're probably BFFs if I would identify it. They're best friends, and Coach V Hill really showed me that the value of what we know, and whether it's time or money or knowledge or food on the table, that it really does increase in value the moment it's shared. And if running had taught me so many truths about optimism and sport and how we can apply it to our lives, the best way I could think of sharing it, besides going to races and speaking at expos and speaking at corporate retreats and flying all over the world, was to produce this book so that it could reach a broader audience. So the book was dedicated to him for showing me the value of that.
If Coach Vigil hadn't been so open and sharing, and I think Coach Hazen would have hit his stride for another 10 years as a coach, because it was a lot of back and forth and friendship making too.
Absolutely.
So first moment I want to talk about is the year 2000. Being positive is easy. And the scene is at Adams State, where Coach Vigil was the college coach for many years. And you were turning the curve, and you saw Andrew, your husband to be at that time, and Coach Vigil standing next to each other. So talk about being positive and being grateful when it's easy.
Yeah, I think, I think that's when we can really just be in our bliss, when you just aren't working so hard, but look up and life is exactly where you've dreamed it to be. Or maybe you never even dreamed of it. Maybe it's just, oh my gosh, like, pinch me. I can't believe I'm here. This is my greatest mentor, this other young man who has swept me off my feet and like still makes my heart flutter to this day.
Yeah.
And there they were standing together. And I just thought, man, my world feels perfect right now. And I think that's just a moment you need to pause and appreciate, because we live through the opposite more often than being blissed out.
Also during that time, I think you were saying in the book that you have to put that in your memory bank so that when it isn't easy, you can go back to those moments and draw on that rather than just having a nice time and then forgetting about it and moving on.
Right. And I think it's important to pause and acknowledge it and put it in your memory bank, because when you're there in a struggle and working hard, it makes you remember why you work so hard, why the choices you make matter, the choices you make on an hourly basis, a daily basis, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, they all add up so that you can have those moments of pure joy in your life. It maybe seems as if it just poof appears right in front of your eyes, as that moment when I saw Coach and Andrew standing together in Cole Park. But it was really years of very methodical decision making, the choice to move to Alamosa, Colorado, because I believed in Coach Vigil so much and I trusted his leadership. And then being, I guess, falling in love with Andrew wasn't really a choice, but just what happened. But being in Alamosa and setting myself up for self-love, I had to get to a place of self-love, which was hard to do for many years before I can open myself up to loving someone in such an open, vulnerable, genuine way. So it was all those choices that led to that moment of, wow, my life is really awesome right now. And then it gets so awesome.
Yeah. Well, another awesome moment, maybe in a slightly different meaning, was the New York City Marathon right after 9/11. The choice to be positive was obvious, because it was kind of either get into deep depression or choose to be positive because of the circumstances that are going on as a country. Tell me what that meant to you personally, being really a center of attention during that time and being a leader in the running community. Yeah,
it was the fact that the New York City Marathon went on at all was a miracle in itself. But I think if the race on the race calendar, if it was 2 weeks earlier, it wouldn't have been able to go on. And so I think New York was ready for some uplift and a reboot, and to rally and come back together and show their true colors. And to be able to host that event, I understand why some people chose not to go, because it was a scary time. With terrorism at the top of the headlines, so many days and weeks in a row. But the choice to be part of the solution and the uplift was a no-brainer to me. And so to be there at the U.S. National Championships in the marathon and be able to be a part of the healing of New York had such a deeper meaning. It really rode me through the streets that day.
At what point in the days leading up to it, did you realize that it was going to be a big deal?
I think I knew even training at home in Mammoth Lakes that I had days where I was like, should I even be out here pushing so hard? Because it's not a for sure thing that this race is going to go on. And we're kind of in the same predicament right now. Should I be training hard? Should I kick back? Should I even get out the door? The answer is yes, you should get out the door. But I knew it was significant, and I wanted to be ready if the race went on. So that was my motivation each day. And then I truly believe that when our purpose is deeper than just wanting to win races and run personal best, whether we're running for a cause, or understanding and appreciating the history of the course, the time in our lives that we're running it, this case being after September 11th, I think it really does draw out more inspiration from us and more capability. I felt it there on the streets of New York that day. I felt it running the Athens Olympic Marathon, just knowing the history of this entire sport that touches hundreds of thousands of lives each year was founded right here on the streets that I'm about to run on. And that kind of spirit really empowers me a lot. It becomes bigger than anything that I'm doing. So a win or a medal doesn't really matter, but to be part of that spiritual journey is certainly significant in a global way.
And New York City loved you. They loved you enough that you came back several times, and you even got to cook with Mark Bittman.
Yeah.
That was a little episode. And I think you were saying some of the same things about your diet or just eating, and that it's not necessarily that you have to restrict what you eat, but it's add good things, and that sort of cycle of adding good things will push out some of the less savory habits you have as a diet.
Yeah, and I think it's very true with optimism and pessimism too. If we look at the yin and yang of anything, that our life is equally full of good and bad. The grocery store is equally full of good and bad food for us. And the more attention we can give to the good, to the healthy, to the optimistic and positive aspects of our life, the more that's going to flourish in our story. And so the same is true in cooking, that if I'm focusing on making sure that I have so many quality ingredients at the table, that then we're just having a cookie at the end of the night instead of eating junk food and then going for an entire pie. So I think it's really fulfilling to have the privilege to make those choices, first of all. And then I think I'm going to get a little deeper here, but I also think that you subconsciously are telling yourself that you're deserving of these good foods, you're deserving of the positive aspects in your life. And so therefore more positive flourishes and health flourishes more. So it's much deeper than just making a good choice or a bad choice on one meal. It goes much deeper to the self-respect and the worthiness of having good in your life.
I don't know that you've ever eaten a full pie, have you?
Yes, I have.
You have?
It's usually around, cake on the birthday.
Yeah, that's
different.
Feel
good. It doesn't feel good in the end at all. And then there was a pie eating contest on 2 occasions, but that's mostly whipped cream and crust.
Yeah.
I don't consider that pie.
So a moment, going a little bit further back in time, 1998 in Finland. This is a point in your training and your career when being positive was difficult. You're training alone, but not only training alone, you're rather secluded from people in general. You're often hungry because they didn't know how to feed an elite athlete. So in that moment, what's the difference between pretending that nothing is wrong and being positive?
Yeah, that is such a huge differentiation, because being positive isn't being dismissive or flippant about reality or what you're going through. It's about really honoring why things are wrong, the state that you're in, changing what you can control, and then what you can't control, having a better attitude towards it. So what my biggest lesson there was that man, everything is perfect when I have control in my life and I'm living in Alamosa, Colorado, and I know my schedule every day. And I created that schedule because I had been, because I picked up my bags and moved there and kind of unpacked my bags strategically and made my schedule strategically. But living in a household that I didn't have the control over my schedule or the amount of food I was eating, where I was going to run that day, I felt so powerless and lonely. And I had to come to the terms because I couldn't make the choice to leave. I was like, oh, I can control this. I'm going to go home. And Coach Vigil wouldn't let me come home. And so if I couldn't change where I was, I had to change my attitude towards it. And it was as easy as that. I mean, it was the hardest time in my entire life emotionally. I've never had a panic attack since, thank goodness, because it was the most, I really felt like I was dying in this attic and nobody that I loved would ever know. And now it seems absolutely ridiculous. And thank goodness I kept a journal at that time, because I'm not sure I would even understand the extent of it now, so far removed from it, in writing about it, if I didn't have the verbatim coming from my journal, and the scared tone and words that I was using in my journal, and really doing something about it. We deserve better than that, and our circumstances, like I said, are happening around us. But in an instant, in one afternoon, because I couldn't go home, I immediately had the most beautiful time in Finland, could appreciate the fields and the forest and the lakes and the sauna, the evening sauna, the homemade cider every night, the warmth of the family that I was with. Whereas the day before, all of that was dark and gloomy and almost didn't even exist in my reality. Yeah. So it really is that switch in your brain and the conscious decision to make that switch.
So was it realizing that you didn't have control and letting things happen naturally? Is that just letting go of the control? What's the thing that switched?
Yeah, it was realizing if I didn't have the choice to go, if I didn't have the choice to change it, then I had to keep my schedule. And how is it going to make my schedule the best? Well, the only thing I really had control over is going out and running. And even though the weeks prior I was scared to go out and run because I didn't want to be lost and I was sticking to the schedule, but my training was going to pot. So now I'm just gonna run all day. I'm gonna run long in the morning, and on my second run, 4 miles. No, I'm gonna run long again. And little did I know I was really building up a lot of mitochondria and all the physiological things that happen in feeling good, taking that control back by going out and running, and then being goofy in the day, dancing in the living room because no one was home. It was the song that they had this CD of was Children by Miles. Gosh, something. Okay, it might pop into my head, but the song was Children. It was like a house party song, and we would just play it cranked up, totally loud in the farmhouse, and just dance around the living room, and then go out and pick berries and things from the garden to try to get in a few extra calories, and then. If we did take a trip into town, I would buy like a pack of Magnum ice cream bars and eat all 6 of them to get in like dense calories. So it was really trying to not take it all so seriously, control what I can, and have fun with the peacefulness. And it did. I went from feeling really lonely to feeling peaceful, like just alone, but peaceful, because I had this beautiful, quiet farmhouse to myself during the day. And the reality was the exact same thing as it was the first few weeks that I was there.
Yeah.
It was just a change of mind.
Nothing changed but you.
Yep. But I had to hit rock bottom to make those changes. I mean, it was when I was writing it, I'm like, this is so embarrassing to show my lowest point.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think nowadays, not only would you maybe reveal that in a book, but it would also be recorded on Facebook forever for everyone to see. So let's talk about in the moment. So you're on a long run. dog chases you, but you get away, but it messes up your run. So there's a negative thing that happens. Something that I talked with my kids about when I was coaching is that novices will feel hungry, and then they think about all that's all they'll think about is that they're hungry and I just want to get some pizza when I'm done with this, or they think my leg hurts, this is terrible. Whereas an elite athlete, or just someone who is at least elite in their mind, would feel that same thing, or feel something wrong. Like they might say, I'm running slow, but instead of complaining, they say, why am I slower today? And then they notice, their chin is hanging out over their toes, so they correct their posture, then they correct their elbows, and then they feel faster, a little bit like that. So that's kind of a way that I've differentiated for my own athletes. This is what a beginner does. This is what a pro does. What is that equivalent for thought?
Yeah. And I think it's okay to think about pizza. I probably think about pizza more on a run than I'd like to admit. But instead of thinking about pizza and thinking like, I'm so hungry, I don't want to be doing this, you're like, okay, when I'm done crushing this run, what am I going to put on that pizza? So it's using everything as an inspiration to get through the run. And because when you're running, every step matters, every mile matters. And if it's a slow day, well, is it a slow day because my posture is bad? Is it a slow day because I really need a recovery day? I crushed yesterday's mile repeat workout, so maybe today I need to back off and not obsess about my watch right now, and take it easy so I can come back stronger tomorrow. Do I need to get into bed early? Is it because I didn't sleep well last night? Do I need to get into bed earlier so I can be fresher for my run? So really thinking about why and how you apply it to being a better runner the next day. And that to me is having a growth mindset, not wallowing in the struggle, but figuring out the struggle so you can move on and be stronger after that.
One of the points in your life when you struggled is when you turned your ankle while you were walking the dog. I think you tripped over a pine cone or something like that. That was one of those cautionary tales that I think got relayed by Coach Hazen at some point. And I told that story every year when kids were saying that they wanted to do intramural volleyball or intramural soccer or whatever it was. It's like, you shouldn't do that because even the pros can have one little mistake that messes up, a big race for them. So that was just a little tidbit because you're a source of inspiration, but also cautionary tales. 2004, winning the bronze in Athens. It was a great story. It was twice in the book. I'm a father of 3 now, so I get teary now. So when my daughter was born, I cried. And I think that's kind of affected everything. Like you watch a movie and you might cry a little bit, but you don't tell your wife that. So reading the book, New York City Marathon right after 9/11, was one of those moments where I almost said the Pledge of Allegiance when I was reading by myself. Yeah. And then 2004 bronze medal. That was another one of those moments. I always remember watching that live on TV, or whether it was live that evening, that kind of a thing with the delay. That was one of those moments where I remember thinking, this is really awesome. This hasn't happened in a long time. And I felt pride for the country, felt pride for distance running, all those things. What happened, though, right after that is before the other competitors had a chance to pick themselves up off the pavement, this huge positive moment in your life suddenly turned into second guessing because you thought, I'm walking off rather than being carried off. Could I have done better? Does that happen more than once, that thought?
Yeah, I think the strength of just success, and Coach Vigil would say excellence, like success doesn't really matter, but excellence does. That if you're trying to excel at or master something, that probably one of your greatest virtues, I would say, would be resiliency. And resiliency comes from big wins and big losses. That no win should be career capping, but used as a catalyst to see how you can improve. And then no loss should define you as a failure, but to pick yourself back up and fix what went wrong and move on and grow from it. So using everything as a growing experience. I felt great joy, even crying in front of billions of people. What felt like a very intimate moment between my team that brought me to the start line healthy and ready, and really it was my gift back to them to make sure that I followed through with the goal that we were so diligent with all year long. And so there was great joy at the finish line. But the second I looked at Catherine Deriba, who was second place, and Mizuki Gucci, who won from Japan, and seeing them barfing on the infield, not being able to get up off the track, I thought to myself, this is the best I have ever felt after a marathon. And obviously, when we run personal best, we usually feel pretty good.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt that although I wanted a very conservative race strategy, the what ifs went through my mind, and the what if could have led me to not running as conservatively and blowing up on the side of the road like I saw half the women do. But I certainly felt that maybe I was the fittest one out here today, and I just didn't run as smart as I should have. So I feel like that's healthy. That kept me signing up for the next race and the one after that, because it's not to say that I should have the gold medal. It's to say that I'm still hungry, and I still haven't perfected this sport yet. There's still more to learn and more to master in it.
Yeah, I'm a huge baseball fan, and from Cincinnati, so originally, and I remember, everybody thinks of themselves as the guy that hits a Grand Slam home run, wins the World Series, and retires, that kind of a thing. But that hardly ever happens, because I've watched games over the years, and I remember one of the third basemen that retired from the Reds 5 years ago or whatever, his last play at bat was getting struck out looking, and he retired. And it's like, you can't always win them all. They're not all storybook endings, but along the way you have those storybook moments, and you can, like we said, put that in the memory bank and add that to your story, rather than thinking of the last thing I did as the only thing that mattered.
Right. And I think runners in general can relate to that, because maybe you've had one moment of that runner's high, that flow state where you're running a 5K or even a mile repeat and thinking like, man, this feels so effortless and good. The weight is perfect. Your body's in sync. And the next day you get out to try to recreate that, and you're far from that. But we keep getting out that door, putting on our shoes each day, and in search for that flow state that feels so priceless, really.
And people have been talking about flow state more and more in the past few years, but I think runners have been talking about that since the 70s. But they called it runner's high instead of flow state, so it didn't sound as cool, or it didn't sound as technical, I should say. But that was exactly where I was going. That's funny. You almost read my notes, because that happened to you in Carlsbad, where you ran an amazing 5K of 14:54, and that'll put any self-respecting male runner to shame, thinking that they're something special. But we already covered that, because you knew exactly what I was talking about. So what I want to go to last is some bingo card questions. So it's basically Deena Kastor trivia. See if you know your own trivia.
Oh, great. I hope there's no times in here, because I don't know times very well. I need to.
No, it's nothing like that. It's more about people and things and places. Okay. So the first one is a thing. Castor oil. What is castor oil?
Oh, yeah. Castor oil is what we have in our kitchen all the time, and it's a blend of olive oil, high-quality balsamic vinegar, honey, chili flakes, fresh herbs, and it's all honey or maple syrup, depending on what we have in the house or if it's local. And we blend it up, and we use it as marinades. We use it as dipping oil for our bread. But it's castor oil with a K, of course, not with it.
There's no trademark infringement.
Yeah.
During the 2020 Olympic trials, you were commentating from the back of a car, looking at the competitors.
What a view.
So I want you to speculate, because the the reason that the marathon trials are held when they are is because it's to see who's the fittest 6 months out so that they have time to recover, they have time to be in their best shape. But now it's not 6 months out, it's a year and 6 months out. So do you think they're going to have to run another trials, or do you think they're going to be sticking with who they got?
Well, I don't know what their choices are, but I would suggest they stick with who they have. We are sending an incredible team. This was by far the most deep and high stakes Olympic marathon trials that have ever been held. Mm-hmm. Atlanta did a great job hosting over 500 of the fittest marathoners our country has. And the fact that these 3 men and 3 women could not only master the mental game of such a high stakes race, of beating past Olympians, past or current American record holders, to me, world marathon major winners, it was such an impressive display of athleticism of these 6 athletes, despite overcoming the mental the mental hurdle of this race, not getting psyched out, but instead getting psyched up and nailing it. That course on that day, with the weather and the hills, the wind specifically, they could handle any challenge that's thrown to them in Tokyo, whether it's 6 months from now or a year or 6 months. Okay,
now you went to high school with a few famous people because you're not far from Los Angeles. So Cario Salem, I think is how you say his name, went to the same high school as you, is a little older than you. So he also he had a bit role, not a starring role, in a TV film set that you also lived near. What was the name of that television show that you grew up near?
It was Paramount Ranch, but it was Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Well, there's that one. I'm thinking even older than that, though. It was filming about the time you were born.
I don't know.
The MASH film set.
Oh yeah.
So you had that film set. Someone from your high school went there, and then also, do you know the actress Heather Graham?
Yes. Yeah.
She went to your high school. Yes. She was a star in a show called Twin Peaks. And you knew of a Twin Peaks in Alamosa. Can you name those 2 mountains?
Oh, shoot.
They're northeast of Alamosa, the city.
Yeah. No, I'm too far removed from it.
It's really obvious when you think about it. But so California is one mountain. And Mount Blanca is the other mountain.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking Mount Blanca was one of them.
Well, it was a Google Maps thing. It's not like I know the place personally. Yeah. So.
Well, Mount Blanca has a lot of significance because it's also one of the sacred peaks of the Navajo Nation.
And you spent a lot of time there, didn't you?
Yeah. At the mountain or in Alamosa?
Well, at Mount Blanca.
Mount Blanca, yeah, we would go run at the base on the other side of the highway is Forbes Tranchera, this big nature preserve, and so we would run out there every Wednesday.
It's a lot like Green Church Road, right?
Yes, yep, giving us some long hilly miles.
Is Green Church Road the one that leads to the hot springs?
Yep, it has hot springs kind of studded on both sides of it. Okay. It's also where Andrew and I built our track about, is it maybe 10 years ago now? That's a long time ago.
Is that the one where the Mammoth Track Club practices?
Yeah.
I did not realize you were the builders of that. I always assumed it was some high school out there.
Yeah, it's on Los Angeles Department of Water and Power land. So we were granted the land and feel very, we actually leased it for $1 for 99 years.
Wow.
They're very generous in that. And during this whole quarantine time, it is the only place that has remained open. Like there's no parks open, trailheads open yet, but the track has remained open and everybody has done a really great job keeping social distance. Like one family will be at one goalpost kicking the soccer ball. Another family will be on the other one. They're scattered around the track or sometimes on the outskirts of the fence, walking. So I feel very very fortunate that it's remained open as a safe place for people to recreate, but also that people have respected it enough to really take those guidelines into consideration so that it can remain open.
Yeah, because that's one of the reasons that so many places close, is because you lose it when you don't do it right.
Yeah.
You hate the word sacrifice.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because I think sacrifice makes it seem like you're missing out. The emphasis is on missing. To me, it sounds like you might be disciplined, but that you're missing out on a lot because of your discipline. And I prefer the word, just a simpler word, choices. That when you have goals and a path that you want to stay on, you make the choices to stay on that path. And it's not a sacrifice. You're not missing out on a Friday night or a Saturday night party because of your long run. You're making the choice to go to bed early because you want to emphasize that long run. So it's just a matter of, it's just how it plays in my head that choices really give me power. I have the choice. I have a choice to make, and what do I want this outcome to look like? And instead of sacrificing and feeling like I'm missing out on a fun life.
You're associated with two folks with the last name Pappas. Can you name those two people? Through running, through track and field.
Yeah. Alexi, the
marathoner.
Yeah.
And she gave a foreword in your book, is that right?
She gave a blurb for it.
Okay.
She got to read it before anybody else did.
All right, and there's another Pappas, a man. Goes back to 2003.
Oh, wow. Oh, was he a decathlete?
He is, yes.
Yeah.
So Tom Pappas.
Yeah.
So 2003.
Better night's sleep in order to do better on this quiz.
Well, in 2003, you received the Jesse Owens Award. And that's a near and dear to Columbus, Ohio people, because obviously he ran for the Ohio State University. He ran in the Olympics, jumped in the Olympics, and just a year, maybe 2 years ago, Jesse Owens' long jump record was finally broken after 80 years. Someone finally broke his long jump record.
It stood for 80 years? Yeah.
So a coach that I worked with in high school coached at Ohio State after I worked with him, and he coached not Mike Hartfield. I think it is Mike Hartfield. He coached him to beat the record. So Jesse Owens in meters was 2.14, and Mike jumped 2.15. No wind, everything. So Jesse Owens was strong enough to hold the Ohio State University record for over 80 years. And then you were one of those recipients of the award in 2003. So tell the truth on this one. Your husband is a saint in the book. He is there for you every step of the way. He's bringing you fluids. He's bringing you encouragement. He's making you smile when it's not always easy. Is that a true representation of him, or am I going to be disappointed that he is not the Greek god that you make him out to be in the book?
I think if you met him, you would actually realize that I could have gloated over him a little bit more. He is that good. I have a rule with gratitude lists that I can't replicate things. Every item on a gratitude list has to be unique when you put it on there. And I found a loophole in this to get Andrew on there again, because during this quarantine, he's actually made us laugh so much. And so to be able to, that this isn't the first time he's ever graced my gratitude list, but sense of humor is on there as a sense of gratitude. So yes, he is that amazing and supportive. And even in this time where I'm not training for anything and running is more for my physical and mental health than it is to go out and run a PR, he's still, I'm going to sit down with Piper and do math. You get out the door and get your running. Yeah. So he's still very supportive of that aspect, as well as other aspects in our lives, in cooking. And I had this wild idea. I wanted to put a labyrinth in the backyard last week. And so he went to the front yard and dug up every rock he could find so that I could make a labyrinth in the backyard. So he's very, very committed to supporting my goals.
And you're lucky to have a partner that supports you like that.
Yeah. I always believe, I mean, it's just like life. It's not always like all fluff and
kind of like having kids too.
Yes, we certainly have differences of opinions and different ways of that we think we know better in raising Piper, but it's the teamwork and really coming together and communicating. I think that's a big communication.
So my wife and I were both good runners. She was varsity for Malone in cross country, and I was varsity in track because I wasn't as good at cross country. But one of the questions that we have as parents is, are we going to kind of nudge our kids into those mile races and those 5Ks when they're a little bit older? Have you thought about that as parents? About you've got quite the genetic makeup in your daughter coming up. Are you going to be kind of thumbing her in the back?
No, I feel like I'm a little bit of a dictator when it comes to schoolwork and a little bit of a dictator when it comes to the piano. Like you have to sit there and put in your 20 minutes and then you can go Google Hangout with your friends. She's 9. So I'm really strict with all of that. I am so loosey-goosey with running because I want her to like it so much.
Yeah.
I want it to be her joy, not the joy that I'm trying to push on her. I will say that since quarantine, she's been on her bike a lot, biking next to me while I'm running. And that's been such a great addition to our lives. It's what I'm most grateful for about this time that is a little bit of a struggle as we try to reinvent trying to make this part of our lives feel normal or as normal as possible. To be able to run with her biking next to me has been such a big joy.
It's funny. We do the exact same thing. I got a bike rack just for that purpose because they're home all the time. So we put all the bikes on the van. We go do this 5K loop where they can bike with us. There's no cars, anything. And it's a good way to get the energy out of the kids. Plus, like you said, they think it's tremendous fun to be biking while mom and dad are running with them.
Yeah. And I also take it very, I feel like it might be a little overkill, but I try to make it look so fun what I'm doing. Like jump over a walk or like just try to make it look so obnoxiously fun that she's like, man, I wish I was running too.
Yeah. My wife and I were good middle distance runners. And it's funny, my wife threw up before races because she was so anxious, and I threw up after races. So we're not going to tell them that for a very long time, though, because we don't want them to have a bad idea.
Yeah, don't ever tell them.
Yeah. So get your Spanish hat on. ¿Sigues estudiando español?
Sí.
Sí. Mi esposa era una maestra para 6 años. Y yo un maestro para 3 años. Y nosotros hablamos solo cuando los niños no necesitas conoces.
¿De dónde eres tu esposa?
Ella es un gringa de Ohio.
Wow.
The coffee that I am drinking, though, she studied in Leva's Coffee, and she studied in Guatemala and actually own the family farm, so it's straight from the farmer kind of coffee. So
that's amazing.
it was really cool. She got to stay with them for 3 months, and they had to off-road with a truck to get to the farm and everything. And she came back with wonderful Spanish, but it was a lot like Finland in her mind because she got really sick, like pass out ugly sick. And so she was really low at that time, but she came back with wonderful experiences, wonderful friends, and a direct line to the coffee market.
And the gift of a second language. So I've been studying with Rosetta Stone. I have a long way to go, but I feel the greatest thing I can do is take my family to a Spanish-speaking country. Yeah. And we've been to down to Mexico, but everybody speaks English. So I want to be a place where nobody even knows how to say hi or hello.
Well, that's the funny thing. I've been to every country between the United States and Nicaragua. So we've been Honduras, Guatemala, we've been Mexico, and every single place we go, even in the poorest parts of Honduras, they still want to speak English, and everyone wants to talk it. So it is good though those are like the hospitality people, those are the restaurant people and things like that. But once you get down to the bartering with someone at a market or something, then you have to know Spanish, because they respect you more when you barter in Spanish. You're not just some gringa.
No doubt. And I think they also respect the effort and asking for help. Like, ¿cómo se dice este en español?
Yeah.
Like, how do you say this in Spanish? Like, help me, teach me.
My mom was a English as a second language teacher, and that's how she created relationships, is she would say something very poorly in Spanish, then they laugh, and then they like, okay, let's work together on this.
Right. You would hear that from me all over the place as I'm working my way through another country. Help me.
Well, yeah, it's being vulnerable is a good way to make friends, is that they see that you're not trying to be someone you're not.
Yes.
A little bit more trivia. Do you know the name Taylor Ewart?
No.
She's a fantastic high school senior, and she's going to be a Razorback this fall.
I do.
Okay. And she is a world-class race walker, because that was what I did in college. That's how I got my varsity, was by doing race walking in college. And
story on Twitter from her and skimmed the story. It was from some local paper, but I ended up reading the story off of social media.
Yeah. And does the Canadian still train in Mammoth Lakes for race walking?
Yep. The Canadian team, both race walking and the Canadian cross-country ski team, come here to dryland train in the fall. So it's certainly fun to have them. We live right next to the ski lift here. Uh-huh. So to see them dry skating down the street or up the street is really fun. It's a fun time of year.
So now you have a new triangle of Ohio with not Arizona, Arkansas, back to Mammoth Lakes. So you got Taylor to thank for that. Last question I have for you is about poise. So I've did plenty of research trying to find out things about you. I read your book. I read articles about you from way back when that still exist on the internet. And you have an incredible amount of poise, because even Paula Radcliffe, you look her up and like the first thing you see is some embarrassing moment when she had to go to the bathroom in the marathon. But when it comes to looking up Deena Kastor, you've hardly had a slip up or one of those Twitter moments where people start
in front of the queen.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder how much of that has to do with what you've been talking about, which is that positivity and gratefulness, where you don't have one of those moments where you storm off after a race because you're upset, or you don't say something you regret later because you're constantly in that positive mindset. Would you say that is part of the reason, at least?
I would say that. I would also say Coach Behill, from the second I landed at his doorstep, let me know that I'm not doing this for myself. It's part of a much bigger picture. I'm representing the team we had in Alamosa back then. I'm representing Alamosa in general. I'm representing my family, my church, my state, my country. Like your community is always bigger than you think you're representing. So even though running can feel lonely sometimes, it's probably the reason why I love training with my team, because it does feel more of a social aspect. I miss them terribly right now. Yeah. But I will digress and give an ugly moment where in the 2000 Olympic trials, I had already run the 10,000 meters and made the team, but I ran the semifinal and the final of the 5,000 meters and led the whole final race until the last 200 meters when Regina Jacobs outkicked me. And in the press conference afterwards, she turned to me with such a sweet smile and into the microphone said, "Before I have any questions, I just want to thank Deena for pacing me to that American record. She was just like a metronome out there, just perfect split so that I could reach this goal. And I smiled at her and I walked out of the press conference. Out of spite, because it wasn't my intention to pace a drug cheat to a new American record. So that I felt like a little bit of a low moment for me. And then one of the most significant times in my career was lining up to my first U.S. national cross country race after working with Coach Vigil for some months, maybe 4 months, and standing on the starting line and really feeling true confidence for the first time in my life, that the training and the application of training really resonated with me. And the gun went off and I went from confident to crushed in a matter of strides. And at the end of the race, I smiled at my family and smiled at Coach Vigil. But when I got back to my hotel room, I bawled my eyes out. I was so disappointed. But he taught me right there when he knocked on the door, when my parents joyfully said, "You should be so proud." And I'm like, "I don't feel proud." And my mom said, "Well, we're proud of you." And well, that doesn't really matter.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that doesn't really matter. And my sister saying they loved me anyway. And Coach Vigil then saying, "You know what? I'm glad you're disappointed." And the next thought was, what a jerk. But then he went on to say, disappointment doesn't mean you failed at this. It means that you care a lot and you expected more out of yourself and you want more out of yourself. Rome wasn't built in a day. When we get back to Colorado on Monday, you're going to get back in your training shoes and you're going to get back to work. And I thought for the first time in my life, disappointment wasn't supposed to be crushing, but could have a better resonance. And he was the one responsible in that moment for teaching me how to shift negativity or a negative thought or even hard emotions and trying to give them a definition that supported our journey a little better.
Well, more transparency.
Yeah.
We all had those moments in our races, whether it was on national TV or in a private hotel room. We've all had those moments where we're disappointed in ourselves.
And I think it's good to acknowledge that, not brush it off and say, "Okay, I'm proud," but to work with, sit with it a little bit and try to work through it at a much deeper level, because to just be proud there was no truth to that. I can't just be proud in this devastating moment. I need to work through the emotion and find a way for it to support me more.
Well, Deena, you're a national treasure. Thank you for taking the time to have almost an hour-long conversation and talk about positivity, talk about your transparency and how we're trying to move forward. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
You bet, Nathan. Thank you so much for the thoughtful questions.
All right. Have a good afternoon.
You too.